Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. It is Wednesday, which means it's the day where I answer your questions. That's right, it's the Ask Me Anything. And, well, I have to admit, I'm stumped. There was a question that came in that I cannot find the actual answer to, so I will do my best to try to answer the question. The question came from a good friend of mine, and she's always good about supplying questions to me. The question is, what is the miracle in Miracle-Gro? And I cannot find the answer. I did searches. I went to the Miracle-Gro website. I even tweeted the question to the Miracle-Gro Twitter people, and they have not yet responded. But I will give you what information I was able to come up with as far as the miracle of Miracle-Gro. So let's give a little bit of history about Miracle-Gro. According to GardenGuides.com, Miracle-Gro was first conceived by Otto Stern, a German immigrant and nurseryman. In the 1940s, he sold plants through a mail order service, but had problems ensuring that the mailed plants survived shipment and transplanting. He approached Horace Hagedorn, who worked at a New York advertising firm, to ask about buying airtime on a radio program. Together, they recognized a niche market for a fast-acting liquid fertilizer, and they hired Rutgers professor O. Wesley Davidson to create a water-soluble formula. The ease of application, combined with the housing boom of post-World War II, boosted sales of the green powder. Peggy Hagedorn, Horace's wife, coined the name Miracle-Gro, and they founded the Miracle-Gro Company in 1950. And then in the 1980s, they wound up selling the company, and Miracle-Gro has since merged with Scott's, and Scott's is a lawn fertilizer company, so it's now Scott's Miracle-Gro. So the term was coined by the wife of the ad sales guy who partnered up with Otto Stern, who was the plant sales guy. And according to the Wikipedias, the history of Miracle-Gro, it says that, let's see here, they teamed up, dedicated to proposition, you don't have to be an expert to create a beautiful garden. So my guess is that the miracle of Miracle-Gro is that you don't have to be an expert to create a beautiful garden, that this stuff works so good, it's a miracle that even people with the brownest of brown thumbs, you know, the people who had pet cacti that wound up dying, those people can have a beautiful garden. Therefore, it's a miracle and your plants grow. That's my guess, and I'm purely speculating here because Miracle-Gro does not answer the question on their website, and they have not responded to my tweet where I asked them the question, what is the miracle of Miracle-Gro? So maybe the social media guy over there at Miracle-Gro has the day off, or maybe they don't answer questions that get tweeted to them on the Twitter. So for shame, Miracle-Gro, for not answering questions that people want to know. The next question for the Ask Me Anything this week is about stomach gas. And this is one of those sort of interesting things because then it starts going into like all sorts of different directions. But the actual question is, what causes stomach gas? And according to medicinenet.com, the usual cause of belching is excessive gas in the stomach, And yes, I realize that was not the actual question of, the question wasn't what causes me to burp, but under their list of intestinal gas facts, that's the first thing, says the usual cause of belching is excessive gas in the stomach that comes from having swallowed air. However, discomfort in the abdomen for any reason also may cause belching. Therefore, belching does not necessarily indicate the presence of excess gas in the stomach. Bloating is the subjective feeling that the abdomen is full, but does not necessarily mean that the abdomen is enlarged. Distension is the objective enlargement of the abdomen. Continuous distension of the abdomen usually is caused by fluid, tumors, enlarged organs, or fat within the abdomen. Intermittent distension of the abdomen may be caused by excessive formation of intestinal gas, as well as physical or functional obstruction of the intestines. Belching and flatulence are virtually universal. The maximum number of flatulence that a normal person has is 20 per day. And yes, that does mean that someone with excessive flatulence would flatulate more than 20 times per day. And if you're below normal, then yes, you would flatulate under that. But the average person, around 20 times is the maximum for an average person. Flatulence results from the production of gas by bacteria. So burping and flatulating are caused by two different things, but both because of gas in the system. Just the belching is gas in the upper intestinal system, such as your stomach, and flatulating in the lower, which would be the intestines and the colon. Flatulence results from the production of gas by bacteria within the intestines when they digest sugar and polysaccharides. Excessive production of gas and increased flatulence may also be because of the greater ability of some bacteria to produce gas, maldigestion or malabsorption of sugar and polysaccharides, and bacterial overgrowth of the small intestine. Belching, bloating, distension, and flatulence are evaluated with a medical history, simple abdominal x-rays. You can also have small intestine x-rays, gastric emptying studies, ultrasound examinations, or a CT, a computerized tomography. I believe they also call that a CAT scan. And yes, it's not when they actually scan a cat, it's what they call the computerized thing. They can also do an MRI, which is magnetic resonance imaging, and they can also test for maldigestion and malabsorption and hydrogen breath test to determine various other causes of belching and or flatulating. And when we come back, I've got one more question, and it's definitely going to take up the rest of the show. It's the question that you may have heard a news story about somebody getting threatened for living off the grid. So it's a question about that. Stay tuned. This is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
During the 2013 Porcupine Freedom Festival, Davi Barker presented an idea for a renegade psychological experiment. Since then, he has refined his idea and put his plan and research into writing. He explains, "We aim to show the world beyond a shadow of a doubt that power corrupts absolutely and corrupt authority deserves no obedience." Authoritarian Sociopathy is available from Amazon.com, all major bookstores, and now available as an audiobook.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs, with a story like no other game before. A liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to ZOG.ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, ZOG.ninja, code FPP.
You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates, like Namecheap, ExpressCoin, and Amazon, at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. Or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. That's shop.fppradio.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So I'll get back to the Ask Me Anything in just a moment. But first, I want to make sure that I tell you about Survivor Max by Davi Barker. 11-year-old Max must survive the zombie apocalypse alone in New Hampshire. The slow-moving, non-thinking lame brains swarm his home searching for living flesh. Max must apply his Porcupine Freedom Scouts training to plan his escape. But first, he must prove that he's too smart to die. And if you've read any of Survivor Max, you know that at least through Book 1 and Book 2, he's too smart to die. But what about Book 3? Well, Book 3 is forthcoming. It's not yet available, but there will be a Book 3. That's right. Survivor Max is going to be a trilogy, and you can read Chapter 1 of the first book for free at survivormax.com. You should also like Survivor Max on Facebook, and if you've read the book, leave a review on Amazon, because reviews on Amazon, most people don't probably realize how important reviews are on Amazon, but reviews are very beneficial, not only in letting other people know that, people either liked or disliked a book, but the more reviews a book gets, the higher up in the search results that it shows. And then there's also other formulas that affect, ratings and rankings of various other things. And the higher a book is ranked, the more likely somebody will buy the book. So if you've read Survivor Max, rate it on Amazon, like it on Facebook. And if you haven't, then you can read that first chapter for free at survivormax.com. So back to the Ask Me Anything. Do you think people should live off the grid? What are the pros and cons of living off the grid? Should it be forbidden? And if so, under what circumstances? So this is one of those multi-part questions, obviously, but there's also some background story about the question. And the background to this story, or rather the background story to this question, is about a couple in Huntsville, Alabama. And this came across my news feed a couple days ago, and somebody had asked the question in the comments of the story. And the original story was from a website that I've heard of, where it's one of these sort of like a news aggregator sort of sites, and they put their own little spin on it. And I decided to find what I would consider a more reliable media report about the story. And the reason that I say a more reliable is because when you're getting a report on a report, then you're losing a lot of information. So I figured that I would go to the source that they cited and see what I could find from WAFF, which is Channel 48 in Huntsville, Alabama. And the headline from WAFF is, "City Says Huntsville Couple Can't Live Off the Grid." And that's a little bit vague. And the reason I say that is because there's underlying issues that the city has with this couple. The story here from WAFF begins, "A Huntsville man joined the military to fight for our rights, but now says his own rights are being threatened. Tyler Truitt and his girlfriend Soraya Hamar are currently living within the city limits, but without city utilities. Huntsville officials say that's not allowed. The city filed a lawsuit against Truitt and Hamar, calling their self-sufficient lifestyle unsafe. The couple says they'd rather be arrested than leave their land. Truitt said, quote, "We live out here off the grid, 100% self-sustaining. So basically, I make all of my own utilities. I have my solar panels, I have my rainwater collection and stuff." The city says that's not a good thing. They say our house is a trailer, which is not allowed in the city limits. City officials have taken issue with the Truitt's off-the-grid lifestyle. Truitt says, "They came and they condemned our house and told us if we stayed here, we'd be arrested for trespassing on our own property. And the reason why they say is it's unsafe living conditions because we don't have city utilities hooked up." Truitt then says, "I took an oath that I would support and defend the Constitution and freedoms that entails, and I really feel like they are being trampled upon." He is prepared to fight for his property and says you have to stand up for what you believe in. They would come out here today if they wanted to and take us to jail for trespassing, if that's what they want to call it. And, that'd be fine with me. I'll still come back the next day and the next day and the next day because it's my home and because I live here. Where else am I supposed to go? And at the time that this first story came out, the city had not yet responded. Nobody from the city of Huntsville government had responded, but now they have. They responded, I believe it was the day after, maybe 2 days after this first story came out. First story came out, let me check the date here, on June the 12th. So about 5 days ago is when this came out. The city has since responded, and I've got their response right here in another article from WAFF. But while I'm pulling that up, let me answer the first question of, do I think that people should live off the grid? And it's interesting because I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday about this word should. And it's one of those it's one of those words that it sounds very polite, but the actual meaning of the word should is something that, like, you must do this. And do I think that people must live off the grid? No. Do I think that if it's what somebody wants to do, then certainly. So there are reasons to live off the grid. There are reasons to not live off the grid. And I guess now I'll jump into the pros and cons before I get into the city's response. And one of the pros to living off the grid is if you are completely off the grid, meaning that you have no utilities at all. You supply your own water through whatever means, whether it's you've built a pump that goes down or a well that goes into the ground and you've got a pump and you circulate it that way. If you've got solar, wind, whatever other form of, thermo, hydroelectric, whatever the stuff is where, like, you dig down and hit some sort of, like, hot air thing in the bottom. Geothermal, that's the word I'm looking for. Geothermal, hydroelectric, whatever sort of thing. If you have all of that and it's self-contained, you don't have a bill to pay. So that's one pro. I'll get into a couple of the cons that I see about living off the grid, as well as give the rest of the story when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Hey, this is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends radio show. I've been working with computer programmer Derek Slopey to create Fiend Phone. I'm using Fiend Phone right now to talk with and record one of my co-hosts in real time. Take it, Davi.
Hey, this is Davi Barker, and I'm 1,000 miles away from Michael, but we sound like we're in the same room.
We sure do, Davi. So, Davi, please tell the nice people more about Fiend Phone.
Fiend Phone is free, open-source software that opens up a global world of possibilities for collaborative, high-quality remote voice media production, and I'm digging it.
People can try the Windows beta version of PhonePhone right now at PhonePhone.com. But we're also raising money to vastly improve PhonePhone and vastly improve independent talk media worldwide.
So go to PhonePhone.com to help out. Who will build the audio roads? We will, with your help.
That's PhonePhone.com. FEENPHONE.com. Foxtrot, Echo, November, phone.com.
PhonePhone. I never knew remote audio could be this good.
Bitcoin Not Bombs is a launching pad for nonprofits and social entrepreneurs into the financial freedom of the Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin Not Bombs offers premium publicity campaigns designed to facilitate an organization's adoption of Bitcoin as a payment system. Bitcoin Not Bombs is fully committed to being the hub of the nonprofit sector of the Bitcoin economy, maximizing the potential cross-promotion of all our clients and commercial partners. To learn more, visit bitcoinnotbombs.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. And before I get back into the pros and cons of off-the-grid living, I want to make sure that I tell you about Roberts and Roberts Brokerage. There are no cons with Roberts and Roberts Brokerage. It's only pros. Like, there are a lot of good reasons to buy gold and silver, and Roberts and Roberts can help you with that. And they've been helping people do that for over 35 years. Since 1977, Roberts and Roberts Brokerage has been a trusted source for buying and selling your investment-grade precious metals. They also take Bitcoin for precious metal purchases and have permanently removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. Call Roberts & Roberts Brokerage today for knowledgeable advice on investing and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 850-478-5270 or visit them online at rrbi.co. That's rrbi.co. So getting back to the pros and cons of off-the-grid living, before I give you the city's response to the couple that is saying, well, the city says we can't live off the grid. So what are some of the pros and cons? Well, I already mentioned if you have everything that you need, your water, your heat, your electric, whatever else it is that you would wind up needing as whatever you consider to be your essentials. Some people consider television essential, and you can do free-to-air satellite, and there's no monthly charge on that. So, the main pro is that there's no monthly charge. One of the other pros is you're not dependent on somebody else. So if the power company goes out of business, or if there's a blackout, and, well, everybody is out of power. Well, if you're self-sufficient and you're off the grid, then while all of your neighbors are out of power, you still have power. What are the cons? And this is something that I've sort of had to ask myself because I'm a big proponent of not being connected. And when I say not being connected to the grid, I don't mean no computers, no internet. What I mean is, not having utilities tied to my name. And there are things that are written in How to Be a Hobo about living off the grid. And a lot of people that think that they're off the grid are not really off the grid. They just are self-sustaining their own utilities. But they're still connected to the matrix, if you will. They're still using the internet. They still have a cell phone, et cetera, so they're still connected to, the web of the matrix, if you will. But one of the negatives about being off the grid on either going that far, just as most people think of, I have solar panels and I create my own electricity. One of the biggest negatives is the upfront cost. And that's one of the things that prevents more people from going off the grid or supplying their own energy is that upfront cost. And then you also have to worry about whatever energy source you choose being reliable. And the reason I say that is because most people are like, well, the sun comes up every day and it goes down every night. Like, the sun is reliable. Not necessarily, because if you have several cloudy days in a row, depending on what sort of solar panels you have, you might not get that passive light to create energy. So then you have to worry about storing extra energy, and how much do you store, and what do you do with the overflow? Do you just like send it into the ground somehow if you've filled up all of your batteries and you've got nowhere else to put it? So what do you do with the extra, and how do you make sure that you have a surplus for those literal rainy days where you're not getting the sunlight to provide new energy? And then there's also the wind, and depending on what sort of windmills you have, you might be able to survive with just like a slight 5-mile-an-hour breeze, or you might need to have like a minimum 20-mile-an-hour breeze to even produce anything. So the biggest cons, the upfront cost, and then deciding what sort of thing and making sure that it's reliable, and figuring out what to do with surplus, and making sure that you have enough for the literal rainy days where you don't have sun, wind, whatever. Should it be forbidden? I would say absolutely not. There should not be any circumstance at all in which a government somewhere says you are not allowed to provide your own utilities or your own water supply. Now, are there concerns about, somebody might not have safe drinking water? Sure, but there's concerns about that now with the government providing drinking water in most places. So the whole, this is a safety issue, it's BS, because there's safety issues with the system that happens now. So let me give you the city's retort. This, again, from WAFF, and their response was a full 3 days after the initial story. Their response came on Monday. The initial story hit on Friday. WAFF reports the city of Huntsville responds to questions about a Huntsville couple trying to live self-sufficiently. People across the country want to help this couple since we broke the story on Friday. While the couple says they are living off the grid, the city says they violated ordinance codes. Since the original story aired, we have received dozens of messages from people as far away as Alaska asking how they can help Tyler Truitt. We reached out to city leaders before the first story aired, but we did not hear back from them until Monday. They say rules are rules and they're standing by them. And I'm sure that there's a lot of things that are on the ordinance books there in Huntsville that they probably never enforce. So, yes, rules might be rules, but your enforcement of them is completely arbitrary. The story here continues. Tyler Truitt did not think his decision to live off the grid would impact anyone. He uses solar panels for heat and electricity, rainwater for drinking and bathing, and composting for sewage. He says, who are we bothering? That's my biggest question. Who are we hurting? Huntsville city leaders say Truitt is bothering them and needs to follow city ordinances, and here's the kicker, that this is always their option, or leave. You can either do what we say or you can move somewhere else and do what they say. Kelly Shrimpshire, a spokeswoman for the Huntsville mayor's office, says apparently he has chosen to live an alternative lifestyle, and that's great. People can choose to live different ways, but if you live in the city of Huntsville, you have to abide by our laws and ordinances. Now, that's a new one for me, saying that living off the grid is an alternative lifestyle. She says that the laws and ordinances state that they cannot live in a trailer that is not in a designated trailer park. Jim McGuffey, the director of planning, said, it's there for property protection. Adjoining property owners like protection, and some homeowners might consider a trailer a nuisance. So we've got this rule because, well, you might annoy somebody living on your 2 acres of land in a trailer with solar panels. This is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online, fppradio.com.